This is Professional Launch with Ricot Aladin, positively connecting the less connected, bridging gaps, and building futures in the community. Professional Launch with Ricot Aladin.
Hello, professionals. My name is Ricot Aladin, and I am the founder of Professional Launch. Now, I want to welcome you to the Professional Launch Show on WDAY. This is the show where we empower emerging professionals and spotlight the people and stories guiding them forward. We are so glad to be here at WDAY. My guest today is a former guest of Professional Launch. We are joined by someone who has been on the podcast before, someone who has mentored countless students and professionals, and who now plays a role on our board. She's retired from her full-time career, but far from finished making an impact. It's an honor to welcome back our friend and Vice President of the Professional Launch Board, Jane Pettinger. Jane, welcome.
Thank you, Rico. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Wonderful. Jane, let's take it back. Please tell us a little bit about your background and what led you into higher education and leadership.
Well, I got my degree in business at NDSU 1,000 years ago, and then got a master's degree shortly after that, and just apparently never really wanted to leave campus. I did work in the social services sector for a few years. And then when an opportunity to teach at NDSU came up, I grabbed it. And what was supposed to be a 1 to 2 year contract turned into 10 years of teaching at NDSU. And from there launched over to MSUM with some breaks in between to raise kids. And I worked down in Austin, Minnesota for the Mayo Health System for a while before returning to Fargo-Moorhead. And really just the campus environment is all that. I absolutely loved it. And so returning to teaching full-time at MSUM was a no-brainer, and I love teaching.
Wonderful, wonderful. So looking back over your career, what moments stand out as a defining chapter in your journey?
You know, it really goes back a long time to when I was 13. I started working for my dad in my dad's office, which was an insurance company, Allied Insurance Company at that time. And really liked the whole business environment, the idea of meeting people, making connections, balancing the books was part of what I did for Dad, and really enjoyed that kind of work. So I knew I wanted to go into business, and that's why I studied that in college. And then in being in college, the whole atmosphere of the campus, like I said earlier, was exciting to me. I loved the variety of people that you would meet, literally from all over the world, the variety of buildings you worked in. It was just really, really a great atmosphere. I was teaching at NDSU, and one of my dad's business colleagues that I'd known for years, of course, Jim Knoll, was aware of some openings to teach part-time at MSUM over the summer. And so that's how I got to working at MSUM, and that's where I would say I spent the most exciting years of my professional life, was running the experiential learning program for the Pasica School of Business. And it really goes back to that connection with Jim Knoll. So it's always about mentoring and connections, really, in my career.
Wonderful. So, and we will talk about mentoring later in the episode on this show. But what lessons from your professional life do you carry with you even after retirement?
Well, really, it is about making connections. I mean, you know, even like when you decide where am I going to travel next, you talk to people who've been there and you know, what did you see? What did you do? What did you enjoy? I just got back from a trip to Arizona, and our days were filled with meeting with people that we know that, of course, winter down there, as well as visiting places like the Botanic Garden, which had been highly recommended, the Taliesin West, home of Frank Lloyd Wright. And those were all things that were recommended by talking to people who'd already been there and done that, so to speak. So part of it is connections. Part of what I like to continue to do, and I really liked doing when I was working, is to empower others, to learn, to grow, to expand, and find out, you know, what is their passion, what is their mission day to day. And I still do that, as you know. Yeah. One of the ways I do that now in retirement is through my membership in the Fargo Lions Club. It's a service organization. We try to make Fargo-Moorhead a little better community for everybody. And I've been on a kind of a drive the last few years to bring in a lot of my former students, including you, into the Fargo Lions Club so that they can experience the joy and the meaningfulness that I have as well with the Lions Club. And then the other thing I would say that is still a very important part of my life is joy and enjoying the journey, having fun. If you're not having fun, I've said to my kids all their lives, if you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong. Not every moment in life is fun, of course, but you need to be striving to find the joy as often as possible.
Yeah, so I really like, whenever you get the chance to speak, Jane, I can see the joy in your voice. I can see the humor that you put in. And I always tell you that. And I think that's something that we all can, whenever we get an opportunity to either laugh or be joyful about what we do, that's a good thing. And as you mentioned, this show is about helping empower young professionals. And I have been in this community and I've had countless number of people who helped me grow, who helped me develop. And I want to provide the same opportunities for those who are in college or even has been in college and then they stop for some reason and they want to try to find a path. And my goal with this show is to have people like you on to help them do just that. And I'm hoping that I know that we've done quite a good things with the show, but we want to do more because we have people like you in our corner. So you have been an important voice on our board and a great partner in our mission. So what drew you to Professional Lounge?
Well, when I was working at MSUM with experiential learning and beginning the mentorship program that we had there, one of the things I learned really quickly is that professionals, serious, experienced professionals, really, really wanted to help young professionals. It was absolutely a breeze to recruit professionals to be part of the programs that I was initiating. And I knew when you spoke to me about Professional Lunch that this is a great idea, that connecting experienced professionals, seasoned professionals to young people was going to be easy on the part of getting the input from the experienced professionals. They were eager, in my experience, to share their life lessons with young people. And in fact, so often when I said, would you be willing to be part of this program that I'm initiating, the typical response was, oh, absolutely. Gee, where was this kind of program when I was a student? I would have loved this kind of thing. So I knew that people who'd been around the block a few times understood the value of sharing their experiences, sharing their knowledge with people just starting out their career. So when you had the idea of Professional Launch, I said, this is perfect. This is the kind of thing that young people need, experienced people want to share their experiences, and I'd like to be a part of making that happen on a broader basis than what I was even doing at work.
Wonderful. And I can second that. I've had, like I mentioned before, in a community, you can imagine some groups, some students, sometimes they don't have the network, they don't have the kind of setting for them to be developed. And talking to those who are accomplished, people who are very successful in their careers, in a 30 minutes conversation, you can learn a lot. And this is what we are trying to do, provide those opportunities for those who are in college, who don't know what they should go for, what they should learn. And by providing the opportunity to connect with an experienced mentor or someone just for a meeting, then that can lead them to some great opportunities. So how has your involvement with the organization been different from your work in other ventures?
Well, it's wonderful to serve on a board of directors, and whether it's this board of directors or other boards that I've served on, one of the things that is rewarding, perhaps, about being on a board is that you can share your ideas, your expertise, your input, and then someone else has to execute it. You can just say, hey, here's a great idea, and then someone else needs to operationalize that. So it sounds almost like a shirking of work, but it requires imagination, and it requires digging into your own knowledge and background in order to figure out, well, what's the best course of action to take? And it's been a joy, of course, to serve on the professional launch board, as you know, because great things are happening and connections are being made, and it's making a difference in people's lives. And it's just really quite an experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, what has been the most rewarding part about serving in this role and helping shape the direction of professional launch?
I'd say the new initiatives. It started out, as you know, with the podcasts, and those were wonderful. Those were such a great way to share the information you were gleaning from folks at a broader basis. But then when you did this on your own, created the Lunch and Learn series for both high school students and also for new immigrant families, that was awesome. That felt so good to be a part of that and to see the impact, especially with the new immigrant families that came to the Lunch and Learn we ran for folks from Haiti. And to see the difference it made. I mean, people walked out of there with jobs in hand. It was just really, really rewarding. So the new initiatives like the platform that's about to be launched for matching people up in a one-on-one mentoring basis, those new initiatives are very, very fantastic to see operationalized.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so, what do you hope that the next generation of board members and mentors will carry forward with this initiative?
Well, there's so much technology that surrounds us when it comes to, for example, social media or meetings via Teams or Zoom, the availability of videos on YouTube. And I hope that both young professionals and experienced professionals continue to tap into that technology in order to reach more people effectively. That we don't lose our humanity through the technology, but instead use that technology to enhance our humanity, to make those connections, to learn lessons, to move things forward, whether it's, watching a YouTube video to learn how to change a tire on your car, or whether it's watching a YouTube video to learn how to make an effective difference in conflict resolution. We need to tap into, maximize, and utilize the technology that surrounds us.
Yeah, wonderful. So, and one of the things I want to follow up is when you talk about the human factor of with technology, how available it is. We don't want to forget the impact that it can have when you sit down one-on-one with someone to have coffee. When you sit down one-on-one just to, talk about your work, you talk about, maybe a difficult situation at work. That's one of the things that I benefited from when I started professional lunch, that eventually become professional launch, right? By talking to people about certain situation, communication, leadership, whatever the topic might be, and that create that opportunity for me to learn from those folks. And like you mentioned, with the platform, this is what we're trying to do, because we realize that students that are in school may not have the courage, may be shy or whatever the case may be, for them to step up and ask maybe a manager, an executive director or a manager to have coffee. But by creating the platform, that gives them that opportunity to do just that.
I think you're right. The opportunity to connect with people, maybe it's electronically to start with, whether it's via Teams meeting or text messaging or whatever it might be, but that initial connection, which is difficult, especially for the young people. And like I would line someone up to be mentored by a CFO, and they'd be like, wow, a CFO, that, chief financial officer, that's intimidating. But then they'd meet him a little bit via technology or a reception that we would hold where lots of other folks were there too. And it's like, oh, wow, they're just a regular person, and they were once a student like me. So I think that we tap the technology in order to build those connections, in order to build relationships. And we need to keep in mind that that's the point. The point isn't the technology. The point is the relationship.
Yes.
And then you build from there.
Yes. Oh my goodness. In professional launch, it's just about it's about that. It's about creating the opportunity for young professionals to connect with experienced one, to have those relationships that can lead to opportunities. Jane, you couldn't say it any better. That's really what we are trying to do. One of the main things that we are trying to do right now is creating a mentoring platform to connect underconnected young professionals with experienced mentors. And when I think of the work that you have done at MSUM, I cannot think of anybody better to help us with this program. And so, can you describe the heart behind that program and how it serves student when you were doing it?
Well, the faculty in the Pasica School of Business at MSUM had uh, drafted or decided upon an experiential learning component as a graduation requirement for business students in accounting, marketing, management, finance, international business, etc. And so one of the many types of programs that came under the umbrella of experiential learning was mentorship. Other items under that umbrella included things like internships, or there was a fund that people could manage called the Dragon Fund, where they literally had money invested in the markets and would make decisions on movement or changes in those investment portfolios. Things like that, where students were doing actual work, not just classroom work, not just writing papers or listening to professors, but working with business professionals, working with money, working with jobs and internships. And so mentorship was one of the ways that we could add an experiential learning component to students' degree that they had under their belt before leaving the university. So I had a model from a couple other universities to kind of draft and look over and follow, and then made it our own, made it fit, our community, our campus, our student body. And really the idea of experiential learning, where you experience something and therefore learn it stronger than simply reading or testing about it, became a very strong plus, I guess, or advantage of being a student at the Pasica School of Business at MSUM. So the mentoring program specifically involved, as you noted, connecting experienced professionals with young professionals, which is, our mantra at Professional Launch. So I rounded up mentors, which, as I mentioned earlier in this broadcast, was easy. I thought that would be an important and challenging aspect of what I did, and it wasn't. I would make a phone call, talk to someone that I either knew through conventions I attended as an HR professional or through our MSUM advisory board, and say, are you on board to be a mentor in this new program? And got resounding yeses. It was impressive and wonderful. My bigger challenge was actually getting students to sign up, because unlike when I was a student, we all talked to one another, seniors to juniors, juniors to sophomores, and we knew who the best professors were. We knew what the programs were, which sections to sign up for, where the advantages in life were for the next year's students, and we shared that information. That's not as true today, sadly. So the word didn't spread amongst the students the way I anticipated it would, because I simply wasn't aware of that lack of connectedness amongst students. So I had to go and recruit students. I'd go and talk to an accounting class, for example, and give a 5-minute spiel about the program. And students would follow me back to my office like ducklings. It was fantastic. And then I'd get them signed up for the program. But that was my biggest challenge, was getting the student participation. They didn't understand what they were missing. And of course, the seasoned professionals understood the value of connection. So that's, I think, still our challenge for Professional Launch today, is getting the younger generation connected to what we're offering. And that was a challenge for me at MSUM in the mentoring program, and I think that's an ongoing challenge that Professional Launch will have to be actively addressing throughout the existence of Professional Launch.
Yeah, so that's the question that's always on my mind, on how to find ways to recruit the students to help them understand the value in that. And I can share this story about me. I can share my story with them, but still there are. I know there are many other ways to trying to recruit them. In my biggest question is, why do you think that they are so either hesitant to get mentoring help, or what do you think the issue is when it comes to finding, mentorship?
Well, I think there's a lot of potential issues, and oddly, I didn't really do any significant effort to look into what are the barriers there, but I more so just worked at crossing them, every opportunity I could. But I think that there's a number of things. One is that it's students are extraordinarily busy. They're juggling multiple demands. Most of them have part-time jobs, if not full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And so they're managing their work life. Many don't live on campus anymore. Some of the connectedness that I referred to when I was a student, that came from being in the sorority house. That came from my sorority sisters and fraternity friends of ours. And so I think that working off campus, living off campus, meant that they were only coming to campus for classes, and then they'd leave again. So I think some of the natural connectedness that I experienced as a college student has simply shifted, has simply changed. So we needed to reach those students in their very busy lives and convince them that, sticking around just a little more either on campus or out somewhere else is worth your time, because their time was very valuable. So that's one barrier. I think another barrier is them growing up in a very social media / cell phone kind of world, where interacting with human beings in a face-to-face environment, which, as you acknowledge, is extremely important, was simply uncomfortable for a lot of them. Not all of them. I mean, I had many students who just blew my socks off by how wonderfully they understood this value. But many were awkward and uncomfortable with meeting with a professional. And so bridging that barrier is a kind of a cultural challenge.
Yeah.
And I don't have any easy answers for that. But I think that professional launch is on the right track for that, because we're starting out with a technological connection, which they are comfortable with. And then we move it from there to that face-to-face.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you work with many students who didn't always have access to networks or guidance. How did you tailor mentorship to meet their real life needs?
Well, one of the things that I insisted on doing with so students were able to take a credit for this class, and as I mentioned earlier, they were required to do something experiential in order to graduate and document that. So they had a need, so to speak, for what my programs offered them. But I insisted on sitting down with each student face to face and did what I would call an interview. And I essentially vetted them and learned, well, what were their strengths and weaknesses already in terms of entering their career years, and then lined up a mentor who could help meet their needs in their own unique situation. So for some, it was exploring careers. I remember one young man who thought he wanted to go into marketing, ended up in finance. And so his first mentor I assigned him to was in marketing. And I wouldn't say that that person turned him off from marketing, but made him realize that he had other talents that might be better used in the finance world. And he's today working in finance. He's a financial manager at a company down in the Twin Cities. So we got him redirected, so to speak, while he still had time to alter his career, his educational choices. Other students were simply looking to make connections in a particular industry, or wanted to know, well, what does sales really involve as a profession? So we'd connect them with people who had those experiences. And students who really didn't know, I would connect with people who were very broad-based in their background and who would introduce them throughout a company. We had a bank vice president who was really good at simply setting up a series of one-on-one meetings within his bank in various areas, finance, organizational issues, HR, marketing, etc. And so students got a real broad outlook by being assigned to him as a mentor. And it was interesting because as a mentor, he always wanted 2 students assigned at one time rather than one. I think he was also a little uncomfortable with one-on-one meetings. He was the vice president of a bank, but he preferred to have 2 students in the room with him. That was a little less awkward, I believe. You know, I don't know. I wasn't in the room at the same time, but you know, some of that hesitation is fairly universal.
Yeah. So can you share a story of a student who really stuck with you, someone whose life changed through that program?
Well, I mentioned Eric, who switched from marketing to finance already. And I got on LinkedIn this morning and haven't been on there as much since retiring.
Yeah.
And had just the greatest morning looking up a number of former students to see what they're doing now. Probably the one that I had the most interaction with myself was actually an apprentice for me. She was an honors student and was assigned to work, I don't remember, 10 hours a week or something for me, just assisting in whatever way she could. And she was so sharp. And I first connected with her. She was in one of my classes, and I was talking about Lagos, Nigeria, and how integrity and honesty matters in managing organizations and businesses. And Lagos had quite a turnaround in that regard at that time and was the fastest growing economy in the world. Now, this is a number of years ago. I don't know if that's still true, but she was in my class, and she's from Lagos. So she just like sat up and listened as I'm talking about her hometown, you know, essentially in the classroom halfway around the world, and then connected with me afterwards, and we sat and chatted. So I looked her up this morning because she did a lot of work for me, and I was always very impressed with her. And she is currently a vice president at Goldman Sachs working out of Dallas.
Wow.
And wow. So that's a huge one. And I looked up a number of other students. There was a student who was going to have to leave the United States. He was an international student because he hadn't yet secured a professional job. And you have to do that after your education in order to stay. And so I reached out to my mentoring database of people in his field, which happened to be accounting, and said, if any of you are looking for a little assistance in the coming months, this young man needs a job, and I can speak to his integrity and his enthusiasm and so forth. Anyway, one of our mentors did reach back and say, hey, I'll talk to him and see if he might be a match with me. So I looked him up this morning, and Kevin is still working with Arrow Advisors and having a great career. So there's a number of folks that I really, like I said, I had a great morning just looking up to see what they're doing now, and they're having a great life.
Yeah. So knowing what, you know, a professional launch is about, so from your perspective, how can mentorship bridge the gap for rural students and the New American communities and those navigating first generation college experiences?
Well, I think really it's connections. You know, I grew up in Fargo-Moorhead, so I had connections. I knew everybody that my dad knew. I used to go with him on his business calls when I was, 15 years old. And so I knew folks around town. My connection to his salesperson, Jim Knoll, who also worked at MSU, is how I got my job. So connections really make a difference. And so folks who are not from this area or are not connected to a business community, like you said, first generation college students perhaps, or students who are traveling here from abroad, making those connections really matters. As I also mentioned earlier, most students have a part-time job. And if they do, then they need to be talking to their superiors and their superiors about career possibilities in that industry. And making those connections, asking for their advice, asking questions like, how did you get where you are today? That's something we don't just ask our supervisor, but we should.
Yes.
We should be asking those kinds of questions. So I think that the students who are not already connected really need to take the initiative to build those connections. However, I'd also speak to those supervisors. If you've got a student working for you and you know they're going to graduate sometime in the next 2 years or 6 months or whatever it might be, you as a supervisor should be asking those students, hey, what's your next step? What do you plan to do? Do you want to stay in this industry? We hear time and again that everybody's having a hard time recruiting good workers. Well, here you have someone sitting in front of you who you know is a good worker. You need to be recruiting them into a professional level position. So it's a two-way street. We need to ask questions as professionals. We also need to ask questions as early career professionals.
Yes, yes, that's true. So, you made a very good point. Like for those students that you mentioned, connection is key, and we can see it now. I think there was a survey out. The majority of jobs that are being filled right now are not going to the traditional way, like putting your resume in and get a phone call. It's through someone that you know that can bring you on, to your next best opportunity. And so those connections really, really are important. So now that you are retired, what does mentorship look like for you, and how can others stay involved post retirement or even mid career?
Well, for me, I've always had like many things going on simultaneously. In terms of family, career, work, boards of directors, and also community service. And so the thing I've retained into my retirement of all that, besides being a board member on Professional Launch, is my membership in the Fargo Lions Club. I believe in service clubs. I believe the role that they have to play in making the community a better place to live and work. And so I've stayed very involved in the Fargo Lions Club and on the board of directors. So that community involvement, and for example, I know that the YWCA has got a playground building initiative going on. I know about the veterans' flights to Washington, D.C. through programs we have at the club. So it keeps me informed and involved and gives meaning to what I'm doing besides just goofing off and having fun in retirement, which is fantastic, by the way. So I think that community involvement, in my case, the service club, is key to staying vital, staying active, staying healthy. And that's true at every level of your career. Community involvement is essential.
Wonderful. So what would you say to someone who's never had a mentor or wants to find one or be one for someone else?
Well, obviously, one thing would be to check out the podcasts of Professional Launch. That's a no-brainer. But also, just get involved, ask questions. If you would ask someone, that maybe someone you admire at your workplace, would you work with me for a while as a mentor? You'd be amazed at how they would be, first of all, flattered to have been asked. So it's a positive question to ask someone. It's not a demanding question. And to simply ask. LinkedIn, a technological tool that is absolutely essential. You need to be on there. You need to have a strong profile there and have someone help you with that. Have someone else look at it, not your mom, because mom's going to go, ooh, that's so cool. You need to have someone else, faculty member, someone at work, look it over and tell you if it looks good. You need to simply reach out. People don't know what your needs are. You may not even know what your needs are, but ask someone for their advice. You'll be amazed at how willing people who have been around the block a few times are to assist you in finding your way around the block. One more thing I wanted to add to my response earlier is that as a student, you have a fantastic opportunity to attend events. In Fargo, every Wednesday morning, there's an event called Startup Brew, and it's a bunch of entrepreneurs talking about their challenges and successes, and that would be a fantastic place to go. MSUM has an event coming up this next week that's all about AI in education. NDSU has an event coming up this week that's all about entrepreneurship and some innovative ideas from fellow students. Students should attend those kinds of events. They can network with other students who will have their own networks to connect to, but they should also bring along a business card and connect with the professionals that are in those rooms and hand out those business cards. Say something to a business professional, thank them for being there.
Yeah, it is. It is so easy to have a business card now, and students should take advantage of that. And even if it just has your number and your email and your full name on there, that is something that you need to spread your name out there. And so, Jane, thank you so much for bringing your full self to this conversation, your experience, your passion, and your deep care for helping others. And Professional Launch is about helping young professionals who are launching their careers, especially those who are underconnected. Find a career path, find a mentor, someone that can help them navigate their journey. Whether you are just starting out or stepping into a new season like retirement, Jane is retired, having so much fun now. Your story, Jane, reminded that leadership and mentorship don't stop evolving. So, to young professionals in the region, Professional Launch is here to connect you, to uplift you, to walk with you on your journey. So, you can find us on LinkedIn, you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on our website, professionallaunch.org, and you can find us on Facebook, or connect with me directly, find me, because we can help you. We can help you find someone to connect with. We can help you in your journey, regardless of what you want to do. So now, until next time, keep growing, keep giving, keep launching. Now, it's up to you to make today a great day. So have a great day.